Building a competitive Vanguard premium deck can feel overwhelming and incredibly complex. With thousands of unique cards released since Vanguard's inception, there's always room to learn and grow as a player. To simplify this challenge, though, I'm starting with just one premium deck set and my knowledge of Standard. My goal? To rise to the top and truly understand what it takes to succeed in Vanguard's eternal format. This isn't just nostalgia, it's climbing the competitive ladder. Welcome to the Premium Vanguard Project.
We are here with Sean Shake. He's a graduate and plays midfield for lacrosse. Everyone knows the comeback story and how you got healthy. What's been the mentality for you that in the rear view heading into the first game?
The mentality for me has just been just me is good enough. God has battle tested me with eight injuries and 6 surgeries, and as I continue to recover, continue to get better, my confidence in the Lord and my confidence in myself continues to grow. And just believe in my existence because I know God's not done writing my story on and off the field.
Man, you know that feeling when you finally finish your deck and you're ready for a tournament? The thrill and anticipation of sitting down your opponent, only to find that when you sit down across the table, you're playing for something serious. You're playing for a trip to Worlds. And all that matters is what's in front of you.
Good luck.
2, 1, begin!
Stand up, Vanguard. Alright, so it's finally time to tell you guys how I did at BCS Chicago. As you could tell probably from the different outfit, I actually did make it back to Texas. I got changed. It's actually very hot outside, very nice outside. Away from the cold that is Chicago during that time of year. As you guys know, this was my first ever premium tournament with a deck I built in less than 24 hours minus the deck set. And, as I said kind of in the intro, the story is still being written. And I'm not the perfect player, but there's a perfect deck out there, and we're going to try and find it to reach our goal of topping in this series. But that all starts with understanding where we're at. And that's why I played in this tournament with what we got. I had another premium deck ready to go, and I want to show you guys how that deck works later on. But for now, let's ride Raging Form Dragon. So in round one, as you guys saw, I played against KSC Richard. Now, Richard actually is a very important opponent for us because he actually helped us basically complete our deck if you've been following the series. He had majority of the cards, and if it wasn't for him, we actually wouldn't be playing this deck. And he was playing Spike Brothers. So the game ultimately came down to the wire, and as much as I hate playing against people round one, Raging Form is a deck that can take advantage of decks that start slow, because Spike Brothers really, I've noticed, doesn't do much until you hit grade 3 and could ride your Rising Nova, whether it be V or G version. And I ultimately saw the pieces to get my triple Vanguard attack on my first grade 3 ride and got a free shot at his Vanguard when he was at 3 damage. But he hit a heal when he was at 5 to go down to 4 and to save me from almost securing the game. Then when he strode on his turn into Galley, he was able to get off a multitude of attacks and basically wrap the game up. So I start the tournament 0-1. But the next round, things were looking up because when I sat down at my table, I noticed no one was there. So by the grace of whatever reason, I'm now 1-1 in my first ever premium tournament. And then round 3 is when I think this whole thing started to change momentum. I was up against Bermuda Triangle Highlander. This was a really good game. Both of us hit OT early, either offensively or defensively, I can't remember for sure. So it was stabilization back and forth. But unironically, even though I haven't played against a lot of premium, Bermuda Triangle Highlander is one of the decks that I did test against because one of the people at my local shop plays it religiously. So I found out that if you get enough to a game state where they have limited resources, they really don't have enough hand to defend your attacks. Especially they don't have the card that disrupts your opponent's field when they G-guard. So I was able to do that in my second stride when I actually ran into Rancor Chain to force the 3-card guard restrict on every attack. And I know Bermuda Triangle has some really decent G-guards, but with high enough numbers on the field, he actually was forced to 1 past my Vanguard, and I broke through with a heal trigger, securing the victory. So I've started 2-1 in my first ever premium tournament, and I just really couldn't believe at this point. So I was looking to carry that momentum into round 4, but round 4 took a turn for the worse because we were up against Eradicators. Now, as a newish player to premium and somebody who only knows kind of the top decks, the crest stuff that's been going around, yada yada, I knew Eradicators were good, but not as good until I actually played against it. I sat down in front of it, and my opponent, Darius, was actually super cool because I explained to him that I was a newer player to the format. He actually let me read the cards and be patient, and then I figured out how it interacts with my deck. Just because with Eradicators, I know they remove cards or bind cards from your deck. So I wanted to make sure I get it right and don't do anything wrong. So one, I just do everything correct, but also don't mess up my mana and Tartu plays. He went first and used the Descendant Ride Chain starter to actually ride up when I was at grade 1 on a grade 3 Vanguard, have the Excel, and be able to stride. Because of how stride works, you need to be at grade 3 the preceding turn. So he was able to have those resources ready to stride when I was at grade 2. And by that point, it was just hard to recover, so we took the L. But then, round 5, things started to look up. We were up against Great Nature. Now, I vividly remember heading into this round super confident, just because, like, I feel like, in a weird way, losing builds character, especially when you could reflect on that loss and learn from it. Like I've always said, I've always said, even like in my sports and personal life, an L that you learn from is a lesson, not a loss. So I actually kind of had a little bit more positive energy heading into the next round. And this is when I played against Great Nature. And something just clicked for my deck. I knew with my record at this point being 2-2, I would dodge a lot of the premium meta, like the Crest Rose, Crest Harry, Crest Shiranui, all these types of decks, because with the exception of Kagero Narukami, premium, and a lot of more disruption stuff, premium Revengers really shines just because Honolulu doesn't really disrupt it, because it's so Vanguard centric, so you're able to do a lot. And then I ended up high rolling my opponent and then defeating him when he was at grade 2. This was my first time ever playing against Great Nature in premium, and my first time ever defeating anybody when they were at grade 2. So we got back to a positive record at 3-2, and I hope to carry that momentum through the rest of the tournament. Now, round 6. Okay, so I sit down and my opponent flips up another Spike Brothers starter. So I know the game plan. If he doesn't have 4 heal guards, I rush him before he rushes me, and that takes care of that. Little did I know that this was a different Spike Brothers deck. It's different than anything I've ever played before. It was Bruce Loop. So using one of the Overdressed Dark States cards in the deck, you're able to get almost infinite attacks at a high power level with a way to consistently call the main grade 3. Although I hit 2 defensive and had a 13 card hand because I was able to do the triple Vanguard restand and generate a bunch of hand that way, he got to attack like 15 times. I don't know exactly, but he was able to seal my fate that way. And it was actually like a really cool deck to play against. I just was like, I never knew that interaction even existed, just because the overdress cards require Bruce, and one of the Spike Brothers strides has Bruce in its name. So that's how I was able to get those multi-attacks off, thus forcing an interesting interaction in premium to defeat us. So with that, we were heading into the final round, 3-3. Now, the best I've ever finished at a BCS this season was 4-3 with Leonore in Houston, and I made 125th. So I was just trying to get better than that. And in round 7, we had an opportunity because it all came down to the wire. Will I finish above 500? Well, so I sit down and get ready. And lo and behold, my first reaction after my opponent flips up his starter is, I've never played this deck before. That's going to happen a lot. But hey, why did we take this deck to the tournament? So we could understand where we're at. It was Shiryuki Yasui Rush. Oh boy, this deck is a doozy. It has so much valid aggression and ways of maintaining advantage due to the way of how Shiryuki works and the support around it. But I've picked up on that due to Shiryuki being a grade 3, it doesn't have much shield value early game. So just like a lot of things, if you attack them fast and with speed, you create a window of opportunity where you could beat them with Revengers. So after trading turns for a bit, I picked up on one thing. Shiryuki is a 12k Vanguard. So I had 2 V Ragings, 1 OG, and a reverse in hand, plus a bunch of triggers. So what I did was I rode one of the V Ragings to get another force marker, and then strode Chain Rancor. And then using the field, I created a field using the grade 3, Dark Bless, 8k, and my Vanguard. And what did these all have in common? After using the crest, they're all above 27k, forcing more than a trigger to guard when he was at 5 damage. And if I remember correctly, he only had like 1 intercept on the field. So with all that pushing numbers out of the way and just playing that correctly, we actually were able to finish the tournament 4-3 and secure a 96th place finish, which is my highest finish at a BCS this year. Who would have thought? So yeah, that was my BCS tournament run. I actually was very impressed with how this deck performed given with the time that we had with it. And of course, there are some changes that I want to make to the deck as we kind of grow for. And with how we did that tournament, I actually got some really good testing to kind of figure out what's good, what's bad, and the changes that I would make to this deck in the future. I still have a long way to go, and I'm excited to take you guys on the journey with me. But for now, I am very content with 4 and 3 as the baseline for how we could improve in the future. However, with this series, there is one person who got me back into the Vanguard game as a whole. And I think it wouldn't be right if we didn't showcase our progress against him. So, ready for a rematch?
You know it.
All right, so as you can tell, we are up against James again. So he's using his Royal Paladin deck from the very first episode with minor upgrades, and we're using our Avenger deck from the very first episode with major upgrades. So this would be a really good test to see where we're at, and also just play a friend again, because he's the reason why I got back into the game in person. So in this match, James won the die roll and decided to go first, immediately riding Laurel Knight Sisyphus and used its skill to grab Ashley from the deck to set up for a later turn. However, on our turn, since we went second, we got to attack first and go into Rinnle, and then with our drive check, we hit a crit, and using its skill, we were able to grab Rockio as our Avenger to set up for our later turn. And with matchups like these, you know you're going to get rushing back and forth, so on his turn, he actually got to set up his field and get a large amount of attacks and set up a bunch of resources. But when all was said and done, I was matched at his 2 damage because he didn't hit a crit. Then, on my turn 2 with Revengers, I've quickly learned in matchups like these, you want to try and push damage early to try and get a free kill shot as Vanguard on turn 3. And that's exactly what I tried to do. I make a full field and try to push damage that way, but James is actually able to properly defend to his turn where he history strides a Blade with a less than optimal setup. He tries to do as much damage as possible, even with terrible drive checks, and gets me to 5 damage while I was at grade 2. Without a heal Guardian in hand, I was relying on damage triggers and perfect guards to keep myself in the game. Then things were also not looking good because we had to ride Slay Hex. Well, I guess they were looking good. Because Slay Hex just auto-fixes this deck all of a sudden. Because it searches out Raging Form, and then we were able to go into Stride immediately, discarding the Slay Hex that we rode as Stride cost to get 2 gift markers. Now, with this ability, instead of putting like the 1 on the Vanguard and 1 on the rear guard like most people, I saw his drive checks. I know what's coming, so I put both force markers on the Vanguard because I really wanted that free kill shot. I'm able to make a field with Dark Bless to kind of guarantee the 3 Vanguard swings with only 1 card in hand, so I was in Brave, like Shion Kiba. And even though he G-guards, he calls his own bluff with the Royal Paladin G-guard. I actually get him to 3 damage, a threatened double crick on my Vanguard swing, and that's exactly what could happen should he no-guard my Vanguard. Then, this happens. OT?
Why they didn't guard?
I'll take that back. I'll give the... Hey, crazy enough, off my over trigger, I actually drew a crit. And even though I got my 3rd Vanguard swing, that actually secured the win for him this time. And even though I dodged Crystal Luster on James's turn because of the advantage that I was able to farm with all these drive checks and things, yada yada, James did the smart thing in my opinion, and we talked about it after. He strode into Twin Sword, Saint Twin Sword, and just had insane numbers that I couldn't guard through the whole rest of the way with multi-attacks and a bunch of things that Royal Paladin could do. So yeah, he was able to wrap us up that way. So continues the streak of me losing on this channel and losing on this series. I'm going to continue this quest to try and win a game for you guys. And like I said in the beginning, I'm not a perfect player, but there is a perfect deck out there for me to do. So I'm going to continue to try and find that.